I had some good conversations. You know, I got Dennis Kucinich, who I was surprised. I had a nice discussion with him in private after the hearing. He's coming on my radio show on Friday on the Peter Schiff show. So, you know, and that's the Democratic side. So, I mean, he seemed that he was open to my ideas and he was willing to listen. But that's just one step. I mean, it's gonna take a lot more than one Democrat, you know, expressing an open mind. I mean, we actually need decisive action quickly because we're running out of time.
Well, I want to bring up a positive point. I have seen some mainstream articles with economists saying, look, we need to cut taxes, and then that will actually create more revenue. And something that big government engineers don't seem to understand is that, what in every case of history, and I want you to complement this information or expand on it, Peter, Kennedy cut the top tax rate by half. He cut the next tax rate by close to half, and tax receipts doubled. So the bureaucrats have to know that when they increase taxes like California's done or like Greece has done, that it takes an economy and puts it into a stall. So why are they doing this?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's politics. I mean, really, if they want the best taxes to reduce, to generate growth and additional income, is the marginal rate of taxes. But of course, that's what they're talking about increasing. But we have so much debt now, there's so much government spending that it can't just be cutting taxes. We have to cut government spending, because if we replace tax revenue with deficits, that's going to do more damage to the economy. That's the point that I was trying to make in front of Congress. The deficits are actually doing more damage to the economy than the taxes. But yes, we need legitimate tax reform. We have to move away from punishing people for working hard, risking capital, and generating wealth. We need to move towards a consumption-based taxation system that doesn't damage economic growth. But at the same time, we have to stop all the government spending. That is the drag on the economy. It's the burden that government places on the economy that's depriving it of the resources that it needs to grow and create jobs.
Okay, well, that's common sense. And I agree with you that historically that's a no-brainer. But where you have really been stunningly accurate is in your basic overall projections and predictions of what was going to happen in the economy. In the intro, I mentioned a lot of the things that you were dead on about. And as a student of history, I can certainly see collapse, further dollar devaluation, a lot of horrors in the future as well. But specifically, looking forward on the course the world is now, QE3, the euro debt bubble, they're talking about transferring the euro into this new financial oligarchy. How do you see all of this basically shaking out?
Well, you know, it's not going to be pretty. Again, you know, it's like they're throwing gasoline on a fire and expecting the fire to go out. It's just going to get bigger. So, you know, we have really severe structural problems underlying the economy. They've got to be fixed. The market wants to fix them, but the government won't let it because the government doesn't like the pain that we have to go through to fix these problems, just like a drug addict doesn't like rehab, and so maybe he doesn't want to go through it. He'd rather just keep using drugs, but that's not in his long-term interest, and it's not in the long-term interest of our economy to keep shooting us up with monetary heroin so that we're oblivious to the pain and don't go through the restructuring process. So as long as we're continuing on this course, we're going to keep going in the same direction, which means the economy will never recover. Good jobs will never be created. The standard of living of the average American will continue to decline. The cost of living will rise much faster than his wages, if he even has any wages, because jobs are going to be disappearing. And eventually it will end in anarchy. I mean, in riots, in civil duress. Who knows what the government's going to do under that environment, because we've lost so many of our rights under better circumstances. Imagine what the government might do when things got to that point. But that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to have a real painful crisis before our leaders do anything right, before they take a chance on not getting reelected in order to do what's good for the country.
Well, Peter, going back now more than 12 years ago, I went to different urban warfare events, different military drills. I put documentaries out showing the military training to lock down U.S. cities, training to confiscate firearms. People were so shocked by the footage I had in Police State 2000 that they didn't even think it was real. Now we've seen Katrina, we've seen other events, any excuse for a federal power grab. That's the appetite, grow, grow, grow. Now we see Mayor Bloomberg saying there's going to be riots if this continues. We see the degeneration in Europe. And I understand there's a lot of slugs and lazy people who are thinking short-term in government. But at the same time, there has been a authoritarian buildup behind the scenes in the last 12 to 15 years in this country. And if they weren't thinking about using martial law to impose their corruption a decade ago, they're certainly now starting to talk about it today. And you're starting to allude to some of that. So specifically, what do you think is coming in the future if the course is not changed? And do you think that the establishment is going to change course?
No, I said they're not going to change course as long as the world will keep lending its money. So as long as the Chinese are buying our debt and the Japanese and Saudis, and as long as we can go into debt, we're going to keep doing that. We're going to postpone the pain. But we're going to run into a problem very soon where we can't do that, where we have a dollar crisis, a sovereign debt crisis, where bond rates really start to surge, the dollar starts to plunge, prices really start to rise, and that's when the problems really set in. Because then what is the government going to do? How are they going to respond to skyrocketing food and energy prices? Are they going to put price controls in place like we did in the 1970s? That's when you get your shortages. That's when you get your riots. But even if we don't do that, if we embark on an austerity program, which would be the right thing, you know, the people who are used to getting government checks aren't going to take that line down. I mean, people are going to be frustrated.
Well, that's my next question.
I mean, look what's happening in Italy or London or Greece. I mean, it's going to happen here, only I think worse.
Listen, I'm all for getting people off of dependency because we know it doesn't work. It creates generations of basically crime-addled, drug-addicted zombies. And we've got close to 50 million Americans, as you know, on the form of digital soup kitchens, bread lines, on the food stamps and little digital cards. But what about the corporate welfare? What about the trillions on defense? What about the trillions in banker bailouts? I mean, I've seen the numbers, but correct me if I'm wrong. We could get rid of all the entitlements and the rest of it, and still, if we don't say no to these derivatives and make Wall Street, the firms that sold this crap, take a haircut, we're still going to be in the same position.
Well, we have to end all forms of welfare or warfare. You know, we're broke, but politically it's hard to say that we're going to cut out the welfare that the middle class enjoys and continue the largesse that the Wall Street bankers enjoy. We got to put an end to all forms of corporate welfare, government subsidies. We need to go back to free market forces. If you're going to succeed in this country, you succeed without help from the government. You succeed in the marketplace because you succeed in delivering a better product to your customers. You lower their costs, you increase the quality. You've got to earn your money. We got to take away this rent-seeking, the ability of politicians to dole out special favors in exchange for support that helps them get reelected. And that's special favors to Wall Street and Main Street. We have to level the playing field. We have to go back to a free market economy where government is insignificant in size and in influence. We want small government where we can have low taxes and we can take care of ourselves. We don't need to live in a nanny state in this social welfare program because it's bankrupted other countries in the past and it's bankrupting us now. And you know, when you have somebody like Mayor Bloomberg, when you and I were talking about riots years ago, and that was, oh, these guys are crazy, this is, you know, kookiness. Well, now you got mainstream guys like Bloomberg saying we're going to have riots if things don't change. And I think Mayor Bloomberg is incorrectly looking for some government program to prevent the riots. It's these government programs that are ensuring the riots because the government programs can't work.
And when the government fails,
will only make the situation worse.
And when the government fails, it's a time bomb. This will be the last question because of your time and our constraints here on the Nightly News. But Congressman Ron Paul, I mean, obviously you're a supporter. What do you think of his run? I mean, is that not a silver lining that he's getting even more support than he got 3.5 years ago? And B, what do you think of the different dirty tricks and media tactics they've used against him? And
yeah, the media is completely, you know, trying their best to marginalize him. I mean, look, when Michelle Bachmann won Ames. She was all over the news, even though she barely beat Ron Paul, who wasn't even mentioned. Then just recently, Ron Paul wins a straw poll in California, the biggest state in the union, and there's no mention of it on the Sunday shows at all. He won in a landslide, and then, as a matter of fact, Texas just called off their straw poll because it looked like Ron Paul was going to win. And I guess the Republicans didn't want to see Rick Perry lose to Ron Paul in his home state. They thought that was too good a story for the media to ignore. So the way they got around it was they canceled the poll altogether. But look, he's running third. Ron Paul in the latest poll has as much support as Bachmann, Gingrich, Santorum, and what's his name? I can't even remember the guy's name.
Mitt Romney.
Not Romney.
Huntsman
combined. All four of those candidates combined. In fact, it came out that Ron Paul has got more contributions from the military than all of his Republican components combined. He's getting more contributions than Barack Obama.
Well, don't the dirty tricks...
Why do our troops want Ron Paul to be their commander-in-chief? Look, this is a big story. He's the dark horse, but you know what? He's going to keep on gaining momentum. It really is probably a three-person race, but Ron Paul, don't count him out. You know, the media wants to write him off. But despite everything that they're doing, he's gaining traction because he's the only guy that speaks the truth. He's in there for his country. He's not just trying to, enhance his resume. He doesn't care about the power. He actually, he's been fighting for these principles his whole life. Some people that talk about the Tea Party, he was a Tea Party congressman before the Tea Party even existed, before they even knew what the principles that they're standing for. So this is his time, and I really hope that he wins. If anyone deserved to be president, it's Ron Paul, and he would make a fantastic president. And if he got elected, and we actually got some congressmen and some senators that were elected alongside him, we might have a chance. I might have to change my whole business strategy. I wouldn't have to be gloom and doom anymore.
It is archetypal.
It's investing in America. I could bet on America instead of against it. But right now, betting against it is like a sure thing.
Well, it is archetypal. I totally agree with you that right as America's imploding, here's a guy for 30-plus years who's been absolutely on target, and we've got a chance to elect him president, and he is in the top three candidates, depending on the poll, as you said, number one, number two, or number three, with all the dirty tricks. In the Wall Street Journal, when he gets over half, won't even show his name. MSNBC, he gets 60%, won't show his name. I mean, Fox News got caught dubbing over him being booed when he won CPAC the second time from the year before. All sorts of weird, dirty tricks. That illustrates the establishment left.
The establishment is afraid of this guy because he's against everything that they stand for. He is the most anti-establishment candidate, and that's exactly what we need. That's what the public wants. But the establishment knows they can't let the public know about him because they're afraid that they're going to.
So if we don't get Ron Paul, though, and things continue, are we looking at total collapse in a year, or is it just continued inflation?
Well, ultimately, the inflation will bring on a collapse unless the Federal Reserve takes action to put an end to it. But, of course, the longer we wait, the longer we keep rates low, the higher they're going to have to rise, the more painful the cure becomes.